Something strange started inside a quiet home in Pennsylvania. A family moved in, hoping for peace, but soon they heard whispers in the dark, voices that sounded like their own. Objects moved when no one touched them, and shadows passed across the walls. Every night, the fear grew stronger. Was it a haunting? Was it their minds playing tricks? Or was something truly evil living with them? For 13 long years, they tried to find the truth. What you are about to watch is not a story made up for movies or books. Everything in this video really happened to a real family, and the events they went through have been documented and investigated. This is the story of the Smurl Haunting, a haunting so real it divided believers and skeptics forever. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. Like, comment, and share if you believe some fears refuse to stay hidden. In August 1973, Jack Smurl, his wife Janet, their daughters, and Jack's parents moved into a duplex on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. They were searching for a fresh start, hoping to leave behind difficulties and build a safe, quiet life. The neighborhood seemed perfect: calm streets, neighbors who greeted each other, and children playing in the yards. The house was simple, a working-class home with enough space for the whole family. At first, everything felt normal. They painted, repaired, and settled in. The smell of fresh paint mingled with the hope and excitement of a new beginning, and for a short while, life seemed ordinary. But soon, small and strange things began to happen. Items went missing and appeared in odd places. Tools that had been left on a table would vanish, only to be found later somewhere they had no business being. Freshly painted walls revealed dark stains that could not be scrubbed away. Faint odors, sometimes described as rotten meat or sulfur, drifted through rooms, coming from nowhere and going nowhere. The family tried to dismiss these events, telling themselves that it was probably just quirks of an old house, or perhaps their own imagination. Yet, each strange occurrence added a layer of unease, and the sense that something was off began to grow. By the end of the first year, the atmosphere in the house felt heavier. Small noises in the night were no longer easy to ignore. Footsteps echoed in empty hallways. The family noticed shadows moving across walls, glimpses of something that didn't belong. The house, which was supposed to be a sanctuary, started to feel oppressive, as though it were watching them. These early signs were subtle, almost invisible to anyone outside the family. But inside, they were enough to make every creak, every draft, every flicker of light a cause for anxiety. The Smurls had moved in seeking peace, but little did they know that their new home on Chase Street would become the center of an ordeal that would last more than a decade. Have you ever felt like you weren't alone in your own home? For the Smurl family, that feeling became a terrifying reality. It started small. Doors and drawers would slam shut on their own. At night, heavy footsteps echoed through empty hallways. Soon, things got worse. Dark, fleeting shadows started lingering at the edges of their vision, and the lights would flicker on and off without reason. A sickening, foul odor would appear and vanish just as quickly, leaving everyone on edge. The constant stress was tearing the family apart. The children became too afraid to sleep in their own rooms, and even friends who visited could feel the heavy, oppressive atmosphere weighing down the house. Janet and Jack knew they couldn't live like this. They had to find answers, no matter how frightening the truth might be. Their search for help was just beginning. Follow for more true haunting stories. The years that followed were some of the most terrifying in the Smurl family's life. What had begun as subtle, strange occurrences now became aggressive and relentless. Shadows darted across walls with no source of light. The temperature would suddenly drop in rooms, leaving icy drafts that seemed impossible in the summer heat. Objects would levitate or move across the floor without anyone touching them. The family could hear whispers in the dead of night, voices that sounded like loved ones calling to them, but with a tone that made their blood run cold. Every evening, the house seemed to come alive, and every night, the Smurls feared what might happen next. The attacks were not just frightening, they were personal. Jack described one night when he awoke to find an unseen presence pressing down on him, making it impossible to move. Janet said she had similar experiences, waking to find shadows hovering near her bed. Their daughters were not spared. One of them reported seeing a dark figure by her door, while another felt herself lifted from the bed by invisible hands. The family dog, already traumatized, would cower, whimper, or refuse to enter certain rooms entirely. Ordinary routines became impossible. Sleeping, cooking, even sitting in the living room became exercises in fear. Their home, once a place of comfort, had transformed into a battlefield where every object and every sound was a potential threat. Even the physical environment seemed to conspire against them. A chandelier fell from the ceiling one evening, narrowly missing one of the daughters. Objects flew across rooms. Doors slammed violently. The house itself seemed alive, responding to unseen commands. These events placed immense strain on the family, creating tension between Jack and Janet and adding to the fear and stress of the children. It was not just a haunting, it was a constant assault on their minds, bodies, and spirit. Every day felt unpredictable, and every night brought a new horror. The family tried everything they could to regain control. They prayed, called priests for blessings, and attempted to maintain routines. But the force inside the house seemed determined, intelligent, and relentless. The fear and trauma began to affect their health. Sleep deprivation, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion became constants in their lives. Even when they left a room, the dread of what awaited them in the next moment followed. There were no simple explanations, no logical answers, only the creeping, unshakable feeling that they were being watched and attacked by something beyond human understanding. What made the Smurl haunting particularly chilling was the duration. 13 years of fear, escalation, and terror is almost unimaginable. Many hauntings are brief or sporadic, but for the Smurls, the presence persisted daily, testing their courage and their sanity. Friends and neighbors began to notice the family's changed behavior. Visits were tense. Conversations were filled with unease. The community around them was aware that something unusual was happening, yet no one could see it and no one could intervene. The Smurls were alone in facing a force they could not touch, fight, or reason with. Despite the relentless terror, they clung to hope. Every morning, they woke and faced the house again, searching for signs of normalcy that rarely appeared. Their determination to endure became almost as important as their fear. The family believed that acknowledging the presence without fleeing was their only chance to survive it. They documented the events as best they could, preparing for the day when help might arrive. Little did they know, the intervention they sought would come from the most famous paranormal investigators in the country, and their home would soon become the focus of national attention. By the end of this period, the Smurls were exhausted, traumatized, and desperate for relief. The house had claimed years of their lives, leaving scars that could not be seen but could be felt in every corner of their minds. And yet, even in this darkness, the story was far from over. The Warrens would arrive, priests would intervene, and the family's fight for peace was only beginning. What was inside that house had not yet revealed its full strength, and the secrets of Chase Street were still waiting to be uncovered. In January 1986, the Smurls finally reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famed paranormal investigators. The family had endured years of unexplained terror and felt that professional help was their last hope. The Warrens arrived to investigate the duplex on Chase Street, bringing with them a reputation for handling some of the most notorious hauntings in the United States. They claimed to feel an immediate sense of malevolence upon entering the home. Cold air swept through rooms, even in the middle of summer. Shadows moved in ways that made the investigators uneasy. The family explained the years of events, from objects flying across rooms to assaults that had left both Jack and Janet shaken. The Warrens concluded that 4 entities were inhabiting the house: 2 female spirits, 1 male spirit, and a particularly powerful demonic force controlling the others. They reported hearing knocking and rapping sounds on walls that could not be explained. Doors opened and closed without touch. The investigators themselves claimed to experience sudden drops in temperature, strange sensations, and even fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures. Their presence confirmed, at least in their eyes, that the Smurls were not imagining the events. Something unnatural had made its home inside the walls of Chase Street. The Smurls allowed the Warrens to document everything. The investigators brought cameras, audio recording devices, and spiritual paraphernalia intended to measure and interact with the entities. During their visits, they observed objects move in front of their eyes and recorded unexplained noises. These experiences were terrifying for both the family and the investigators. The Warrens maintained that the demonic force was strong, malevolent, and intelligent, using the other spirits to terrorize the family. The intensity of these encounters drew media attention and increased public interest, making the Smurl home one of the most well-known alleged hauntings in the United States. Even with the Warrens' presence, peace was not immediately restored. The family continued to report attacks. Shadows still lurked in rooms. Objects continued to move, and the air occasionally filled with the same foul odors that had haunted them for years. The investigation brought some understanding, but not relief. For the Smurls, the validation that the events were real did not make them any less terrifying. Every day remained a test of endurance, and every night still held the possibility of new horrors. The Warrens' involvement marked a turning point, but the story of Chase Street was far from complete. Even with the Warrens involved, the Smurls' ordeal was far from over. The family sought help from the Catholic Church, hoping spiritual intervention could finally end the terror. Priests visited the home, performing blessings and prayers, yet the church approached the situation cautiously. One priest spent 2 nights with the family, but reported seeing nothing unusual. The church never formally approved a full-scale exorcism at first. Despite this, the Smurls held on to faith, believing that divine protection was their only shield against the forces tormenting them. Every blessing, every prayer, felt like a small act of resistance against a presence that seemed determined to dominate their lives. In 1986, the haunting attracted national attention. News outlets picked up the story, and suddenly the quiet West Pittston neighborhood was thrust into the public eye. Reporters camped outside the duplex. Curious neighbors whispered about the family, and strangers came seeking a glimpse of the allegedly haunted home. Some locals resented the attention. Bricks were thrown at the house, breaking windows and heightening the sense of fear. The Smurls, already under attack from unseen forces, now faced scrutiny, skepticism, and even hostility from their community. Their private nightmare had become a public spectacle. Books and film offers soon followed, turning the story of the Chase Street house into one of the most widely known hauntings in modern history. The media coverage intensified every strange occurrence. Skeptics dismissed the events as a hoax, while believers pointed to the Warrens' investigation and the family's consistent accounts as proof of something supernatural. The Smurls were caught between 2 worlds, the unseen forces terrorizing them inside, and the outside world debating the reality of their suffering. This dual pressure added yet another layer of tension, making it harder to find peace, and leaving the family trapped in a situation that seemed to have no end. Even amidst the chaos, the Smurls continued to document every incident. They recorded noises, kept logs of attacks, and sought guidance wherever they could find it. Each day became a careful balance between facing normal life and surviving the terror inside the walls of their home. The combination of church involvement, media attention, and local disbelief created a complex environment where the haunting could no longer be ignored by anyone who learned about it. The story of the Smurls had become larger than themselves, leaving unanswered questions that would haunt everyone who heard it. After years of relentless terror, the Smurls made the difficult decision to leave the house on Chase Street. The emotional and physical strain had taken its toll, and no amount of prayer, blessing, or investigation seemed to bring lasting peace. Moving was not an escape from fear, but a necessary step toward survival. They hoped that leaving would finally end the daily assaults, the flying objects, and the shadows that haunted every corner of their home. Packing up their lives, they prepared to abandon a place that had once promised safety but had become a prison of fear. Once the family moved out, reports suggest that later tenants experienced no unusual activity. The house returned to quiet, normal life, at least on the surface. Skeptics immediately questioned the Smurls' story, pointing to the possibility of psychological explanations, family tension, or even the effects of stress and trauma over years of hardship. Some critics also highlighted Jack's brain surgery in 1983, suggesting it could have affected perception or heightened sensitivity to ordinary noises and shadows. Others dismissed the story entirely as exaggeration or a hoax. Yet for the family, the experiences were real, vivid, and terrifying. The fact that no one else witnessed the same phenomena did not diminish the fear that had consumed their lives. Even after leaving, the Smurls struggled to reconcile what they had endured. Memories of objects moving on their own, unexplained sounds, and invisible forces lingered. The family's faith had been tested to its limits. Every shadow, every sudden noise, reminded them of the years they had spent under siege. They carried scars that could not be seen but were deeply felt, a constant reminder that the events in the Chase Street home were more than imagination. The trauma shaped their daily lives, influencing decisions, relationships, and even their perception of the world. Despite the skepticism and criticism, the story of the Smurl family captured the attention of the wider public. Books, films, and media retellings turned their ordeal into one of the most famous hauntings in America. The cultural impact extended far beyond West Pittston, making the home a symbol of unexplained terror and the questions it raised about the unseen. The tale became both a cautionary account and a source of fascination, leaving people to wonder what truly occurred within those walls and whether some things exist just beyond human understanding. Even now, decades later, the house on Chase Street still stands. It is quiet and ordinary to the casual observer, but for those who know the story, it remains a place of unanswered questions. The Smurls' experiences left a lasting legacy, a story of fear, endurance, and the thin line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. It is a reminder that sometimes what we cannot see can still change our lives forever. The Smurls moved on, but the shadows of their past lingered. The questions remained. Were the events truly supernatural, or simply the result of coincidence and stress? Could faith, courage, and persistence truly confront the unknown, or were some forces beyond human control? Their story ended in the sense that they left the house, but it did not conclude. It created curiosity, doubt, and a lingering tension that continues to captivate those who hear it. And so the house that was once a sanctuary became a story that refuses to die. The family walked away, but the mystery stayed behind. The terror they faced, the shadows they felt, and the fear that followed them for years are now part of history, leaving everyone who hears it wondering what truly happened. The story of Chase Street does not end here, and the next part will reveal even more about the investigators, the warnings, and the strange occurrences that tested the Smurls' courage in ways few could imagine. After years of fear and uncertainty, the Smurls finally reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigators. The family had endured more than a decade of relentless torment and felt they needed experienced help. When the Warrens arrived, they immediately sensed something was wrong. Cold air swept through rooms, even in the middle of summer. Shadows seemed to move where no light existed. The house itself felt heavy, oppressive, and alive with a presence that refused to be ignored. The Smurls recounted years of events, objects moving on their own, furniture thrown across rooms, voices mimicking family members, and attacks that left both Jack and Janet shaken. The Warrens concluded that multiple spirits were present, 2 female entities, 1 male, and a particularly strong demonic force were reportedly inhabiting the home. The investigators claimed they experienced sudden drops in temperature, cold spots, and strange noises that seemed to follow them from room to room. They reported witnessing objects move and doors slam without any explanation. To the Warrens, it was clear that the Smurls were living with a malevolent presence, one that used the other spirits to terrorize the family and assert control over the home. Their presence validated the family's experiences, though it offered little immediate relief. Visits from the Warrens included documenting the activity through audio recordings, photographs, and spiritual devices meant to measure and confront the entities. On multiple occasions, they claimed to see shadowy figures and experience sensations of pressure or sudden fear. The family hoped the investigators' presence might finally bring resolution, but even with experts involved, the haunting did not relent. The Smurls continued to experience assaults, shadows, and objects moving on their own. The house had already claimed years of their lives, and now it seemed determined to test them even further. The involvement of the Warrens brought new attention to the Chase Street home. Their reputation amplified the story, attracting media, curious neighbors, and skeptics alike. Some saw the investigation as proof that something supernatural was occurring. Others dismissed it as exaggeration or hysteria. Yet for the family, the events remained terrifyingly real. Each night, they faced the same relentless fear, while outside observers debated what could or could not be happening. The dual pressure of unseen forces inside and public scrutiny outside added layers of tension and despair. Even the Warrens admitted that the force inside the house was powerful and intelligent. It was not content with minor disturbances. It actively sought to terrify the family and exert control over the home. The Smurls' courage was tested daily, and they documented every event, hoping to create a record that might someday explain what had been happening. Faith, hope, and determination became their only weapons against a presence that seemed beyond human comprehension. Every visit from the Warrens revealed more about the strength of the entity, deepening the mystery and the fear. Yet despite these investigations, the terror did not end. The family continued to live under constant stress and anxiety, struggling to maintain normalcy while the entity made its presence known in new, unpredictable ways. Even with experts present, the home remained a place of danger, suspense, and unexplained events. The Warrens' involvement provided evidence and validation, but peace was still out of reach. The Smurls' life on Chase Street remained a daily battle, a story of endurance against a force that refused to be ignored. The events documented by the Warrens left the Smurls' story more widely known than ever. It became one of the most discussed hauntings in America, drawing both believers and skeptics into debate. And yet, the family's experience continued behind closed doors, filled with shadows, whispers, and fear. What they endured revealed a darkness that was neither fully understood nor fully seen. The next stage of their story would involve public exposure, media attention, and the cautious approach of the Catholic Church, further complicating the fight for peace and keeping the mystery of Chase Street alive for everyone who dared to learn about it. Even with the Warrens investigating, the Smurls' ordeal did not end. Hoping for spiritual relief, the family turned to the Catholic Church. Priests visited the home to perform blessings and prayers, offering what comfort they could. Yet the church approached the situation cautiously. One priest spent 2 nights in the house, but reported seeing nothing unusual. A full-scale exorcism was never immediately authorized. Despite this, the Smurls continued to believe that faith could protect them. Every blessing, every prayer, felt like a small victory, a fragile shield against a presence that seemed determined to dominate their home. By 1986, the haunting had attracted national attention. Newspapers, television crews, and curious strangers descended on the quiet West Pittston neighborhood. The once peaceful streets were filled with onlookers and journalists, eager to witness a house said to be under attack by something unseen. Some neighbors resented the attention. Bricks were thrown at the Smurls' windows. Rumors spread quickly, creating an environment of tension both inside and outside the home. The family, already living under terror, now faced scrutiny, skepticism, and even hostility from their own community. Their private nightmare had become a public spectacle. Media coverage also brought offers for books and films, turning the Smurls' experiences into one of America's most famous hauntings. The story captured the imagination of the public, with debates over whether the events were real or fabricated. Skeptics suggested psychological explanations, coincidences, or exaggeration, while believers pointed to the Warrens' investigation and the family's consistent reports as proof of something supernatural. The Smurls themselves were caught between 2 worlds, living with fear inside their home and facing judgment and curiosity outside. The dual pressure amplified their anxiety and kept the story alive in the public eye. Despite the chaos, the family continued documenting every incident. They kept detailed logs of attacks, objects moving, and strange noises, hoping that someday someone might understand the full extent of what they endured. Each day became a careful balance between trying to live a normal life and surviving the horrors inside their home. The combination of church involvement, media attention, and local skepticism created a complex environment where the haunting could no longer be ignored, leaving questions that would linger for years. The story of the Smurls was no longer confined to Chase Street. Their experience became part of a larger conversation about the unexplained. People debated the events endlessly, trying to determine whether it was a true haunting, a case of mass hysteria, or something else entirely. For the family, however, the debate mattered little. The events had left deep emotional scars, and even with the support of the Warrens and priests, the home remained a place of fear and uncertainty. And yet, amidst all the attention and scrutiny, the Smurls clung to the hope of relief. They continued to pray, to document, and to endure. Every blessing and investigation was a small step toward reclaiming their lives. The house on Chase Street had become more than a home. It was now a symbol of their struggle against an unseen force. A reminder that some battles are fought not just in the physical world, but in the shadows of what we cannot see. Their experience with the church and the media set the stage for the next chapter of their lives. The constant public attention, combined with relentless supernatural activity, eventually led the family to make a life-changing decision: to leave the home that had become a prison of fear. After 13 long years of fear, exhaustion, and unanswered questions, the Smurls made the painful decision to leave the house on Chase Street. The choice did not come easily. This was the home where they had built memories, raised their children, and hoped for a peaceful life. But peace never came. The air inside had grown too heavy, the nights too long, and the fear too deep. The family packed their belongings slowly, each item carrying the weight of memories both joyful and haunted. When they finally closed the door behind them, it was as if they were leaving a chapter of their lives buried within those walls. Once they moved into their new home, something unexpected happened. The strange noises, the moving objects, and the dark presence all seemed to vanish. The air felt lighter. The rooms were silent. For the first time in years, they could sleep without fear. The silence felt almost unreal, a quiet so deep it made them question whether the nightmare had truly ended or was simply waiting to return. But as weeks turned into months, the haunting did not follow. For the Smurls, this was both a relief and a mystery. How could something that had tormented them for so long suddenly disappear? Later residents of the Chase Street house reported no unusual activity. Life there returned to normal, with laughter, dinners, and quiet evenings replacing the chaos that once filled its walls. This raised even more questions. If the house was normal now, what had caused everything before? Some believed the Smurls were sincere and truly experienced something beyond explanation. Others argued it was stress, psychological strain, or misinterpretation of natural events. The debate between believers and skeptics grew louder, each side certain they knew the truth. Investigators and psychologists began offering alternate theories. Some pointed to the intense pressure the Smurls were under, suggesting that stress might have led to misperceptions and fear-driven reactions. Others mentioned environmental factors, such as faulty wiring or vibrations that could create strange sounds and sensations. But none of these theories could explain everything. How could simple stress make objects move or voices speak? And if it was imagination, how could multiple people in the same house experience the same thing at the same time? The questions only deepened the mystery. For the Smurls, the move brought peace, but not closure. They had escaped the house, but not the memories. Each family member carried a piece of that fear with them. The sleepless nights, the voices, the shadows that felt alive. Even in safety, they sometimes woke in the middle of the night, expecting to hear a crash or a whisper. The haunting had ended, but the trauma remained. It was something that would stay with them for life, a constant reminder of what they had endured. Skeptics continued to criticize, claiming the family had exaggerated for attention or that the Warrens had fueled the story for fame. But the Smurls never changed their story. They stood by every detail, insisting that everything they said was true. To them, it didn't matter who believed or doubted. They knew what they had seen, what they had heard, and what they had felt. And that truth, no matter how terrifying, was enough. As the years passed, the Smurl family found a fragile kind of peace. They rebuilt their lives, focusing on faith and family. Yet, the story of Chase Street refused to fade away. It became one of the most discussed hauntings in American history, a tale that blurred the line between reality and the unknown. Whether it was a haunting, a case of mass hysteria, or something beyond human understanding, no one could ever prove what truly happened. But one thing was certain: the Smurls' experience left a permanent mark on everyone who heard their story, and the mystery of what haunted that house would continue to echo through time. Years after the Smurls left their home, their story continued to stir questions and debate. The haunting became one of America's most discussed cases of the paranormal. Books were written, television specials aired. In 1991, a film titled The Haunted was released, inspired by their experience and the Warrens' investigation. It brought the story to millions of viewers, turning the quiet duplex on Chase Street into a symbol of something far larger, a mystery that refused to die. Even as time passed, people remained divided. Some believed the family had truly faced supernatural forces. Others insisted that stress, fear, and suggestion had created a shared illusion. Yet, no one could ever fully explain the depth of what the Smurls described. The voices, the cold air, the moving objects, the attacks. Too many details aligned. Too many witnesses told the same story. The truth, it seemed, lived somewhere between faith and fear, between what can be seen and what cannot. For Jack and Janet Smurl, life after the haunting was quieter. They rarely spoke about it in public again, preferring peace to the attention that once surrounded them. Their faith remained strong. In their hearts, they believed that they had survived something truly evil and had been protected by something greater. Jack Smurl passed away in 2017, and Janet has lived her later years privately, away from the spotlight that once followed their every move. But their story continues to inspire fascination, curiosity, and debate. The Smurl haunting remains a mirror, reflecting what we believe about the unseen world. Some hear their story and find proof that evil exists beyond what we understand. Others hear it and find a reminder of how powerful fear can be when it takes hold of a home, a mind, or a family. No matter which side you choose, the events on Chase Street remind us of one simple truth, that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be remembered. And even now, as the years fade and the house grows older, the story still whispers through the quiet streets of West Pittston. Perhaps the walls remember. Perhaps the echoes remain. Or maybe, just maybe, the haunting was never about the house at all. Maybe it was about faith, about fear, and about the fragile line that separates the two. If you've listened this far, it means you're as curious as I am about the unknown. So take a moment to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like this video. It helps us tell more true stories like this one, stories that blur the line between reality and mystery. Leave a comment below with what you believe really happened inside that house. Was it a haunting, a hoax, or something far darker? Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, not every story ends when the lights go out.